Just a helpful hint, these are conversations between adults intended for adults. There is the potential for some adult subject matter or adult language.
Hello, this is Danielle Ireland, and you are listening to Don't Cut Your Own Bangs. Today's guest is Corey Sleet. In all of Don't Cut Your Own Bangs history, this is the first hair specialist that we've had on the podcast, and I'm freaking out because, one, it's a great episode. Corey's so hilarious and grounded. His story is so interesting. And two, he actually gives some great hair advice. So get your pen and paper out or get your notepad on your cell phone out because you're going to want to take some notes. Corey dropped some really good truth bombs in this. I've had the good fortune of knowing Corey for 7+ years, and he's just a treasure and a gem of a person. And I'm so excited for you all to get to know him too. So get ready to sit back, relax, and enjoy Corey Sleet. Corey Sleet. Mm-hmm. What's so exciting about having you here is that, so the title of the podcast is Don't Cut Your Own Bangs. I've never done an episode about hair. And not that this conversation is going to be about hair, but you, sir, you've transformed my hair over 7 years. We've been working together for 7 years.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that wild?
Mm-hmm.
So for everyone listening, Corey Sleet, he is a stylist, colorist, extensionist,
Brazilian blowoutist extraordinaire. He does all the things except updos. Except updos. And I'm so excited that you're here. So I think part of the reason why I'm excited about this too, not only because you're a hair expert, the first hair expert we've ever had on Don't Cut Your Own Bangs, but two, you're freaking hilarious. Like, you're just so funny. I feel like I spend the 2 to 3 hours, depending on the processing that I'm doing, because guys, newsflash, these highlights were not created by the sun. And sure they were.
But I feel like we spend the whole time laughing or chatting or whatever. So,
well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's funny. The reason why I tell jokes, and if my clients listen to this, they're gonna love this, is because when I first started doing hair, I wasn't very confident, but I knew that I was sort of funny.
Yeah.
So what I would do is mask my insecurity with jokes. So I would think it's going to turn out one way, and then I blow it out, and I'm like, oh God, well, that didn't work.
So if you come out with a real zinger, that means my hair didn't turn out the way you envisioned it.
Yeah, pretty much. If you're crying, then I'm internally struggling. But
so a priest and a rabbi walk into a bar, and
exactly, pull my finger. But it was one of those things that it just worked, and then as I got better, I don't know if I stopped telling as many jokes, but I think it was then at that point I had created this funny experience.
Yeah.
So I had to keep it up. So now this is just me now.
Right.
I'm pretty confident now, but it's just this goofy Corey.
Well, you should be pretty confident now. I mean, you're pretty incredible. That's why I send all my friends to you. And that's interesting that you say you started off almost as like maybe not a self-defense, but maybe like a self-preservation, like humor kept you calm or gave you the presence of or like the affect of confidence while you were working with people. I can totally relate to that. I either do, when I'm really nervous, I do one or the other. I act very serious and I use unnecessarily big words to sound and feel more intelligent. Like if I'm in an environment where I feel small. God, I did that all the time when I was going to grad school too. I'd be going to events with my husband, David, and there'd be all these muckety-muck, very successful business owners. And then, I feel like that
should be said more.
What, muckety-muck?
Muckety-muck.
We're bringing it back. Hashtag muckety-muck. But I remember, because when you introduce yourself to a group of strangers, particularly at like networking events or whatever, the question, what do you do? I interpret, and maybe it is this, but I don't know. I interpret it as like, how important are you to me? Like, what value can you bring to me?
Sure.
And so when that answer was like, well, I'm in graduate school and I'm not working, and I'm working as a student, and I was like 31. I was like, oh Jesus. But so I either get really serious to try to make myself feel very important, or I will turn into, I think, like a dancing clown, and I'll just make jokes. And literally when I taught dance, that was definitely what I did. So if I got nervous, I would just
really crank up the humor.
Well, you're one of those sneaky funny people too. Like people out there probably on your podcast I don't know if they get all your humor, but it's like sneaky funny or you'll slip something in there. And it's funny you mentioned that when people would ask you what you do. Mm-hmm. I've been doing this now, 16, 17 years. I have to sit and do the math. And initially I was embarrassed to tell people.
Well, because you're a man and what's interesting is you're a man in a female dominated industry.
Sure.
However, that said, it seems like this way with like chefs or teachers, it's like the elite are male professors in a female dominated education industry, or like the elite chefs are men, but like women traditionally cook. But with hair, it seems this way, where it's a relatively female dominated industry. Yet I think the people that you look to, like Orbe or Paul Mitchell, like the people who have really created names in that industry are men.
Yeah. And Vidal Sassoon, who is probably the name in hair. And you're right. It is I think still it's more of a female dominant industry, but there are a lot of men.
There are.
I would say if I had to throw a number out there, I would say 40%, are men now. And I didn't even know why I was embarrassed. Like I was not embarrassed or ashamed. It's hard to explain it. Just like, I think I wasn't confident in my skills yet.
Sure.
So to say I'm a hairdresser, like now I have no problem telling people. But before, it wasn't like a shame. It was just like, I do hair. Yeah. That's what I would say, or I cut hair.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying I'm a hairdresser.
Because so like if saying like I cut hair, could that also mean like a barber?
It could.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it would just close the door of the conversation and just end it.
Right.
And the interesting thing is the only people that would kind of look at me sideways or funny are people here in Indiana.
Oh, wow.
When I'm in New York or Miami or LA or Chicago and I say I do hair, they're like, oh, where do you work? Here it's like, oh.
Yeah.
It's like that sideways glance with a grin followed by it. But now I just, so I would make a joke about it, because again, that's what I do when I'm nervous. I make jokes.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I do hair. Where do you work? Supercuts, great clips.
Supercuts and great clips.
And then they, oh, really? And I'm like, no. And then it kind of levels it off. So.
But I think that part of your story, what's so interesting is that like, and you talk about this all the time, probably because you have a lot of the newer stylists that come up and kind of go through, what is that called? Apprenticeship? Assistant.
It can be an apprenticeship.
But they're like you're usually the first person that the assistants work with to kind of get introduced to being an assistant, right?
A lot of times, yeah.
A lot of times, and maybe it's not always that way, but
no, it's a lot lately.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that I just have observed through watching you again for 7 years is that it's easy to make fun of something you don't understand, but hard work and consistency always come out ahead. They always come out ahead.
Sure.
So because that's okay. You can laugh, or that's okay. You can sneer because you're going to want my wife to get an appointment with me and I'm going to be too booked. So that's good. You can laugh all you want, buddy, but I'm going to.
And that has happened more often than you would believe.
Yeah, I bet more than, even though I already believe it, I bet it would surprise me how often someone would kind of laugh and then be like, hey, like, so can I?
Yeah, because usually, you're at a sporting event, I love sports. I love the Pacers. I love the Colts, probably the Colts a little bit more.
And that's usually when I go to sleep when you start talking about that.
And you'll have these testosterone filled environments, and you have, the lawyer, the banker, the real estate guy, the guy that owns his own business. And, you're all in this circle, of testosterone, and everyone's, slapping their whats and talking about how much money they make and all these things. And what do you do, Corey? Oh, I do hair. Oh, and then there's the halfway, the grin. And, for many years, there weren't a lot of straight guys that did this.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, in this Midwestern little big city, that's how it is. And then next thing you know, like you were saying, 2 months later or 6 months later, I run into these same guys who are giving me the sideways looks, and they're like, my wife hates her hairdresser. Mm-hmm. Can you work her in for me? And usually I do, just because it is an ego boost, with that, because now you're coming to me for that.
Yeah.
But I think it was just like you were saying with the new people. I loved how you said consistency, because they asked me, like, how do you stay so busy? And I'm like, you have to do the same thing every day. You have to be the same person. And if that means if my first client's at 9, I get there at 8:45, every day, and do the same steps every day. Now there's a double-edged sword with that, because a lot of clients will leave you to do the same thing all the time.
Sure.
So it's consistent, but embracing change.
Yeah. Well, and I think with consistency, it sounds like your work ethic's what's consistent. Mm-hmm. Your techniques might change because you get educated and trained all the time. Like you're always trying to learn new skills. But the consistency is how you show up, how hard you work. It's almost like, because I think about in terms of like mental health, a lot of anxiety is trying to manage or navigate uncertainty or unknowns. And so the only thing you can control is how you show up, how you respond, how you, like your maybe discipline. I don't like that word because I don't consider myself a very disciplined person, but
I think you are.
Oh, well, thanks. Well, it just, but I think what you control is like, the attitude you bring in, the way that you relate to people, how hard you work. But then what evolves or changes is maybe the products you use or the education or all that.
Well, and as you're growing, as a young stylist, I try to ingrain this in our young people. You're selling you in the beginning because you aren't as skilled.
Yeah.
So you have to be consistent, and that could even just be a little thing like when you're new, you don't have the timing down.
Yeah.
Just letting people know I'm running 15 minutes late, consistently, because they may want to stop and get a Starbucks. They might be fighting with their child, and that extra 15 minutes, gets them out the door. But that's what's going to get people. I mean, your skill, obviously, but that word is huge, consistency.
I think that your industry and the industry that I'm in now, and even heck, when I taught dance, there's only so much education you can get before you have to start applying it. And then that's where you really it's almost like you get another master's degree in on-the-job learning. And so when you because you obviously have your own experience beginning as a stylist, and you're also sort of shepherding and kind of guiding other people that are also learning too. What would you say to someone new who was just getting started, not just with hair, but maybe with anything? What do you wish you would have known maybe at the beginning of your career?
If you don't love it, don't do it. Because, I outwardly show it all the time, but I truly love doing hair. I love it.
Yeah.
This thought of a 2-week quarantine is going to drive me insane, because I might just have some friends come over and just do some haircuts in my kitchen. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
Because I need to get my hands in it. But anything can feel like a job if you don't love it.
Yeah. Wow.
So when we get people that come in and shadow from beauty school, and usually what they'll do is they're all young and happy, and they're seeing the people and feeling the energy and the music. And they say, oh my God, I want to work here. I want to work here. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to be. And at some point they're standing next to me, just handing me foils, and I try to be nice. And
you are. At least you seem to be.
No, I'm kidding. And I'll ask them all, do you love this? And they were like, what do you mean? Yeah, I love it here. I'm like, no. Like, do you love this? Like, do you love doing hair? Not do you like braiding your friend's hair before a dance? Not do you like doing 2 clients a day at beauty school because that's fun. Those are your friends. Do you love it to where that 14th hour of that third 14-hour day and your back's killing you and you just want to go home and your client's upset because they're missing one foil in the front? Can you still smile and stay another hour and put that one more foil in the front? Because if you don't, again, it's just a job. I sold insurance before this and I made tremendous money, but I hated it. So
so that's a great question, or like maybe a good follow-up question. That is, how do you know if you love it? Because I can think back on like my trajectory of the different jobs that I've done, and I think looking back at the various things that I did, I think I was looking to find myself in the work rather than go within myself to really ask, what do I love and what do I want to do? And it took me probably most of my 20s to really figure that out. And I think even doing what I do now, it's like I still kind of do 3 different things. But I love each of them for different reasons. And you are someone who has seemed to be in the last 20 something, I'll say almost 20 years of your career, again, you'll put in a 14-hour day and then you put in another 14-hour day. And then you'll take a 3-day vacation and also fit in clients when you're on a long 3-day weekend. Like you're working. And it must be because you love it. Because otherwise, I don't know if you could pull that many hours.
Yeah. I mean, I knew, this is going to sound crazy. I knew I loved hair at 8.
Wow. So a
8.
little boy, 8 years old, Gary, Indiana, living with your mom and all your siblings, you knew you loved hair then.
I knew I loved it because there was one day where I saw my mom. It's funny. So in Black households in the 80s, there were no flat irons. There was no hot tools. There was a hot comb that my mother would put on the stove. Literally, and it'd probably get like 600 degrees.
Oh.
And she would flatten or straighten my sister's hair with that. And I was fascinated that this comb could do that. And then when I would just sit and watch and didn't understand why I liked it. I just would sit and watch. Even the smell of it, the smell of burned hair.
Yeah.
Like it was just kind of like it awoke something in me.
Wow.
And so I was there. And then when I was young in Gary, Indiana, and I wanted a job, I think I told you that my mother and my siblings are all Muslim. So with that, there was this guy who was very influential in my life growing up, who was like this hustler dude. And one of the things he would do was sell bootleg purses and bootleg perfumes and bootleg cassette tapes. This was then cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And I asked him if I could work with him. I wanted a job. He said, sure, come with me, show up at my house this time, blah, blah, blah. So I would go in with him and I would literally walk. We would go to hair salons and he would walk in with these purses lining his arms,
Yeah.
And he would walk down, and I'll never forget the first time I walked in, the same smell of burned hair from my house. All these women lined up, laughing, music's playing.
Yeah.
The environment was insane. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I didn't even know. And that's from, I started at 8.
Yeah.
But then at 12, 13 is when I was like, this is what I want to do.
Here I've heard other people in different vocations like talk about that moment where they had that certainty and they knew. And I always envied that because I didn't have that with one thing ever. It's always been multiple things, but I have to imagine too, like the toss up or the trade of knowing in your heart the thing you want to do, that would make doing any other thing probably feel like torture. Like because it sounds like it wasn't like you just knew at 8 years old that you wanted to do this thing and then just made those steps. I mean, you tried doing other things first. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've had many jobs, most of them in the service industry, but even at high school graduation, I knew that I wanted to go to beauty school.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I think I want to, again, the embarrassment.
Yeah.
This was 1995, and I was like, I want to go to barber school, Mom. And she says, well, why'd you want to do that? And I said, I just want to be a barber. My plan in my head was to go to barber school because it took 4 months. Then enroll in beauty school at night. So I would be a barber during the day and then go to beauty school at night and just not tell anyone.
Yeah.
That was going to be my plan. Then my mom, because she has 8 kids from my stepfather, she wanted me to set the tone with education and says, no, that's crazy. You won't make any money. You're going to go to college.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you don't talk back to Black moms. That's going to be like one of those flashback moments. And I just did it, and then at 20, it was funny how the universe works.
Yeah.
At like 23, 24, I don't know. I can't think. I don't know. I met these 2 hairdressers because I was working part-time at Bravo in Castleton, the Italian restaurant.
Bravo.
Rest in peace, Bravo. It's closed now.
Yes, like the herb oil.
Oh my God, that place is insane.
But go on, yeah.
And these 2 hairdressers came in and they were dating these 2 brothers who were the bartenders there. And I don't know why, but I was immediately drawn to them. But I wasn't even dating them. I just was like, their style, how they carried themselves. And I found out they were hairdressers. I was like, oh my God, okay. So I would be a fifth wheel with my friends. Through one of them, Dawn is her name, I met Bobby Cooper.
Wow.
At a New Year's Eve party he was throwing with Sarah. And
so Bobby Cooper, just to, because not all of our listeners are based in Indianapolis. So Bobby Cooper Salon, would you say is it the number one salon in
I think
Indianapolis?
So.
I mean, I think so, but I'm very biased because that's where I go. It's also won like national awards, right?
Oh yeah, we're in an organization called Intercoiffure, and it's the top. I can't remember if it's 5 or 2% of salons in North America.
Wow.
And we're the only one in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
That's in it. There's one in Greenwood.
That's in that category.
Yes. And the only way to get in is you have to be invited.
Oh.
And then once you're invited, then you have to be approved.
So it's like the Hogwarts of hair?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, pretty
God.
much. 100%.
Sorry, I'm 100%. Sure that we come up with a much sexier analogy, but that's where I
No, I get it. I love all that shit. Star Wars, all that. But so I met Bobby, and the crazy thing is I go to this party and it was $150 a couple, I believe. Bobby rented out this penthouse.
Wow.
And it was all food and stuff's included. Had a DJ. And we walked in right at midnight. And it was like pandemonium. It was crazy. And we walk in, and long story short, not to bore you guys. No. Bobby tried to kick me out because he thought I was trying to sneak in.
Wow.
And I wouldn't leave.
You're like, these are my people.
I'm like, I was invited here. Why do I have to leave? I haven't done anything. Like, why do I have to leave? And after going back and forth for about 5 minutes, the woman that invited me runs up. She sees me, goes, no, I invited him. I stay, have a great time. Where it's great is 3 days later, I'm at work at Bravo. In walks Bobby Cooper to have dinner.
Hello, universe.
I know. And make it even better, he sits in my section with Sarah. I wanted to put Visine in their drinks. Hence, what was that movie?
Rating?
Wedding Crashers.
Oh, Wedding Crashers. Yeah.
Yeah, because don't do this, everyone who's listening. But Visine gives you explosive diarrhea. And most people know that anyway, it doesn't matter. And I was going to do it. The bartender brothers were also with me at that party and were also not being let in. So it wasn't just me. It was a group of us. And I'm like, let's get him. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. We had a bottle of Visine behind the bar that we use for unrulies. And this is a true story.
That's just a great service announcement to treat the waitstaff with respect.
I mean, and this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Who knows what people are doing now?
Lord.
But the thing about it is by the time you get to the doctor and realize something's wrong, it's out of your system. So they're like, you're fine. Get out of here. And this is a true story. My grandmother, God rest her soul, I love her still, was still alive. And right as I was about to put the Visine in their drinks, I had a vision of her. And it said, Corey, kill him with kindness.
Oh.
And I pull the drinks back. I go over, serve them. I ended up lying to my manager, telling them they were friends of mine. They got all their food for free. They got wasted. And at the end of the meal, Sarah looks at me and says, do I know you? And I said, well, yeah, you tried to put me out of your party 3 days ago. Then I found out it had nothing to do with me. It was a girl I was with. She didn't like that girl. So we ended up going out that night, getting wasted, the three of us. And that started our friendship.
Wow.
And it still took me 3 years to decide I really want to do hair.
But, you had it sounds like too, like not only through that friendship, but seeing an example of a successful man doing the thing you wanted to do. I'm sure that, because what is Abby Wambach, who's the Olympic gold medal soccer player, she, married to Glennon Doyle. I saw her in a talk. She said something like, it's not just if you dream it, you can do it, but it's like, if you have to, if you see it, you have to see, and then she said it much more eloquently than I am, but basically when she started in soccer, there weren't female soccer teams.
Sure.
They're at least not at that level.
Yeah.
And so the more examples there are of people doing the thing you want to do, it plants that seed of it's possible, and it helps you kind of push through. So it still took 3 years, but you had at that point now through Bobby and Sarah, you had a model of two people who were making it work.
We'll be back to the show after this short break. In this show, I talk about journaling a lot, and that is because, frankly, I believe in it.
I believe in journaling. I believe in the art and the practice of sitting down with yourself and getting really acquainted with your own thoughts and feelings. No one knows you better than you, no matter what the expert is, no matter what the topic. You know yourself better than anybody else. And the best way to tap into that wisdom that I have ever found is journaling. Click the link in the show notes and grab a copy of The Treasured Journal. It's a journal made with you in mind. And now, back to the show.
Well, because I was in sales, I kind of could make my schedule because I was selling insurance and credit card machines. I somehow always ended up at the salon Bobby worked in. I would just sit there and watch. I would clean bowls. You know, I didn't even know why I was there. Somehow my car would end up there.
Like the boy watching his mom with the hot comb.
Yeah. And I kept thinking, I want to do this. And every month, my anxiety and hatred for my job grew.
Yes.
Every month.
Yes. It's like that fire builds up and you're like,
and also I saw this world with Bobby Cooper, who, I mean, I tell everyone I would not be the hairdresser I am without Bobby Cooper. I mean, I hope he knows that. I can express that to him. I've said that to him before, but I don't know if he really listens. But
I haven't listened to this.
Yeah. And I saw the love that he got. Like he was almost, I don't want to use the word worshipped.
Yeah.
But in Indy, in the early 2000s, Bobby could go to any bar, any party that was happening. They would invite him. And I was like, I was able to go with them as their friend. And I was like, holy shit, like this is unbelievable. And so it's funny how you mentioned envisioning it.
Yeah.
I started mentally, I have a really good, I don't know if this is good or bad, way that I can zone out.
Mm-hmm.
It started as a kid. My stepfather would yell at me because I would literally sit and stare, but I was not staring at the wall.
Like daydreaming.
Yes. It was like a movie was playing.
Yes.
And I could see
I do that
what
too.
I wanted. I could see if I wanted, you know, I wanted a pair of Air Jordans really badly when I was young. I love Jordans still. I have a closet full of them like an idiot. But I would envision Air Jordans on my feet.
Yep.
And then somehow they would be there.
Yep.
You know, my pastor at my church had a really good sermon a few years ago. And he says, and I'll never forget this, you have to see it, pointing to his brain before you see it. And he points to his eyes.
Yeah.
So you have to visualize it. And
you have to see it before you see it.
Yes. Yeah. And I can remember right when I was getting ready to probably go crazy because I was drinking all the time because I hated my job. The only reason why I do hair is because I got in a car accident where I should have died.
Wow.
I had some black ice at 70 miles an hour on I-69 going to see a client to sell insurance. Went across all four lanes, clipped the guardrail, got airborne, crashed, opened the door and walked out.
That's so bizarre. I have a story that I'm going to get to in a second, but I'm going to tangent out for a second. Steven Spielberg, he was giving a commencement address at some college, maybe NYU. I don't know exactly which one, but he said that right before every great professional, creative, personal endeavor he had, he would get these little inclinations, these little whispers. He called them the whispers, and to trust the whispers. And it took him, he said, a long time to really begin to trust that instinct, that little subtle voice. Because what I know too is that like the internal critic in our heads, it's like a drill sergeant. It screams at you, you're a piece of shit, you're nothing, you suck, you're worthless. But then every once in a while, we can get quiet enough to hear that little still voice. But when we don't, it's like, we don't even realize how much I think we ignore it through drinking it away, through shopping it away, through.
Well, we try to numb ourselves.
100%. And it's so interesting that we'll put ourselves through all of that suffering to avoid stepping into the direction or going into the direction of that whisper. But I had a very similar experience with a car accident. I've only been in 2 in my life. And the second one was I had temporarily quit dancing because I knew that teaching ballroom dance wasn't the thing that I was meant to do. It fed my ego for a long time and it was so much fun and I loved it for different things, but I knew it wasn't it. And so I tried various different jobs in like retail and fashion and skincare thinking that those would be it, and they weren't. And I was on my way downtown on a Sunday afternoon to open a store that I worked in. And I was just, knowing what I know now, I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. But I was driving downtown and a van, red or ran light, and T-boned me right into the driver's side door.
And it literally, I don't know the severity of your accident. You said you should have been dead, so it must have been pretty serious.
No, I walked away.
That's
had a bruise on my elbow.
So they fully T-boned into the driver's side door at full clip. They didn't hit the brakes. My car is what stopped the impact. I had a teeny baby hairline fracture in my hip bone, teeny. And I had like a bruise on my collarbone from the seatbelt. And I didn't even know this was a thing, but chemical burns on my hands from the powder in the airbag. I didn't even know that was a thing. But anyway, other than that, like walked out. And I had 2 eyewitnesses. One of them was an IMPD officer who was off duty, who saw the whole thing. So not only did I walk away with my health, but there was no question. There was never a question of, then you get into the aftermath of all the accidents and insurance and all that bullshit. But anyway, it was literally, and I don't think that the world is out to get you, but it's like we get opportunities to wake up all the time.
Sometimes you have to get
knocked upside the head.
Yeah, or someone has to shake you.
Yes.
It just shakes you.
Yes. But I remember it wasn't in the car accident. It wasn't in the hospital, but it was later. It was like, I was saying to myself and aloud, I don't want to do this job anymore. This isn't right for me. And literally I was stopped.
So with me, when you got hit by the car, did things slow down?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I saw it coming and knew the impact was coming. Yeah. And I think part of what helped me was I turned my steering wheel to the right. So I was already sort of leaning into the direction that I was going to get knocked into.
Sure.
And I think, but yeah, everything slowed down.
With me, I can still clearly remember it. And I was doing 70 on some bald ass tires in a Camaro. And which Bobby Cooper, speaking of him again, used to make fun of me because of that car all the time. I'll never forget the first time I was at their house and he didn't know I was there. And he pulls in and he comes in the door and says to Sarah, "Whose Camaro's in our driveway?" And she goes, "Shh, it's Corey's." Like, don't say anything. And so I'm driving, I'm coming up on this overpass. And I remember thinking, oh, those often have black ice on them.
Yep.
You should slow down from 70 miles an hour. And I put on my turn signal, move into the right lane, and then it just starts to fishtail slowly. And like a dummy, I hit the brakes and started heavily fishtailing. Again, went across all 4 lanes through the grass. I'm going north in the southbound lanes.
Oh my God.
And it was so slow. Like I could clearly see everything. And the last thing I remember thinking before I went and clipped the guardrail, I went airborne and crashed down, was I want to see the car that's going to hit me and kill me. I remember thinking that. And when I landed, I still wasn't sure because it was a big explosion. Somehow my cell phone stayed in the cup holder.
Wow.
I have no idea how that happened. So I'm looking for my grandfather. I'm dead serious. I'm thinking I'm dead. I die instantly. I'm looking around for my grandfather. And then I was cold. I'm like, wait a minute. It's not cold in heaven, I think. I don't know. And I jump out and you're saying witnesses, all these people come running from this truck stop to see if I was okay. And there's one guy, "Are you all right?" And I go, I think so. He goes, "You flowed off the bridge." And I'm like, "What? You flowed?"
Oh.
I'm like, "Oh, I flew."
Yep.
"Oh, I flew." "Oh, yeah,
you
thanks."
Corrected his
Thanks,
grammar.
Jen.
You're in shock.
And yeah, like literally. So the ambulance comes, state police, and fire truck. They don't know what's going to happen. And I'm standing there and they're there pretty quickly, which is what I remember, like within 10 minutes.
Wow.
And the state police officer comes up to me and he says, "So what happened?" And I tell him. He doesn't believe me. He walks up the embankment and looks at my tracks, comes back down. And he goes, "Son, I've been doing this for 30 blah, blah, blah years. And I've probably seen 100 of these accidents. Someone always dies." He goes, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I'm thinking he meant physically. And he goes, "No, really, are you all right?" And I said, "No, I'm fine." And he puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, "No, are you all right?" I burst into tears.
Yeah.
Burst into tears. He hugs me. And I remember I say out loud, "I should have died."
Yeah.
But also at that moment, it was a release because I knew I was going to be different from this day forward.
It's like a BCAD moment.
Like it's over. The old health insurance and angry and drinking all the time. I made 6 figures, but I never saw it because I spent it drinking, partying, smoking pot.
Well, and think about how many people, and I know because you probably see them in your chair, and I know that I work with some too, but it's like that accident gave you permission. I mean, it probably deeper than permission, but it's like, are you going to live now? It's like, are you really going to live now?
But I would suggest to people, don't wait for that moment.
Yes, God. Yes.
I mean, I knew that moment I was done. I knew it. Yeah. I knew it. And so the guy says, well, do you want me to drive you back to India? I'm a state cop. I can drive you back. I was in Marion, which is, about an hour north-ish. And I said, no, sir, I have to go to work. I have to buy a car now. And he's like, what? And I said, I have to buy a car, sir. Like, I don't have another car. Can you drive me to Enterprise so I can get another car? I got a rental car and continued driving to Fort Wayne. I don't know how I did that. I have no idea. I think it was adrenaline because I'm a worker. This is why I work 14-hour days. It's probably why I'm not married. Now, if I had someone to make me go home, I'd probably go home. But
all right, everyone listen.
All I know how to do is work.
Yeah.
My friends at work are like, you're always here. First one in, last one out. But at that moment, I felt new. But here's the kicker, the crazy thing. So I immediately called my boss. I was like, I'm done. I quit. Fortunately, I've had, like I said, a number of jobs in the service industry. I immediately call my friend who is the chef at Sullivan's Steakhouse. I need a job. He's like, okay, you're hired,
Mm-hmm.
And I go to beauty school and I enrolled. And I can tell you to this day, I can't think of a greater moment in my life where I felt, have you ever seen Coming to America?
Yeah.
Do you remember when Eddie Murphy's character Akeem starts working at McDowell's and he has that big goofy grin and he's mopping, but he's so happy to be mopping?
Yeah.
That was my face the entire first week of beauty school.
Yeah.
These people thought I was crazy. I'm like 26, I think 27, somewhere around there. Everyone else is like 18.
Oh God, don't even get me started. I understand.
But here's what also is crazy. And I hope Bobby listens to this. I didn't tell Bobby for 6 months that I was going. And I made Sarah, who for those that don't know, that's Bobby's now ex-wife. She's my best friend. I made her swear to not tell him. And there was the embarrassment, I didn't know why I was.
I get it.
But I was like,
well, because it's vulnerable, because I think that's why people stay in that resentful kind of angry space and numb out, because in a weird way, there's protection there. And when you actually get the clarity and decide to step out to do the thing that you're meant to do, or do that thing that lights you up, there's now risk, because what if people don't accept it? What if people reject it? What if I'm not good at it? The entire time I was in grad school, I remember there was this sort of track underneath of like, okay, you're 30, 31, and you better, what if no one wants to be your client? What if no one takes you seriously? What if I
had all that?
Yes.
I had what am I doing? I'm giving up a really good career and I was just getting my residuals, going. And I had many nights like that, where I was like, you're an idiot.
What if this doesn't work out?
This is not going to work out. People aren't going to come to you. You're bald.
Yep.
Like, who's going to let a bald guy cut their hair? And not even to be crazy, but I felt there was a little bit of race involved in that.
Sure.
Because, my mentor, although he didn't know it yet, Bobby Cooper, he does primarily white people.
Right.
And I'm like, who's going to let this bald black dude do their hair? And that's what I thought. I was like, I have to be good. So since I'm not good yet, make them laugh. That's going to get them to relax and get you to relax. And, you still have those people who, don't laugh at your jokes. Then I start to sweat.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And I'm bald. So when I sweat, you can
There's
see
nowhere to hide it.
Yeah.
So what did your friends and family from childhood, not the friends that you made in the salon that knew you as a stylist, but the people that knew you from your former life, what did they think about your transition?
They were surprised.
Yeah.
They were very surprised because they knew that Bobby was one of my closest friends, but I never told anyone that I wanted to do hair. No one. And most were supportive. There was one guy, who's my old roommate, and he was really nasty about it.
Huh.
Like, he was like, I'm going to tell your family that you're crazy and you're giving up this tremendous career to go to beauty school. And for me, that almost became motivation.
Yeah. The naysayers.
Like, I'll show you, asshole. Like, this is it. And not that I would ever cheer anyone's misfortune.
Sure.
But, he's not been able to get his life on track ever. But I try to find positive meanings in things. And I think that he was just trying to help me see the bigger picture within his mind. Keep selling insurance, buy your own business. Yep. One day you'll be a millionaire.
Well, I think that's the one of the, I mean, because it's easy to say like, go for your dreams and dream big and go and do. But part of the reason why I started this podcast was that there's very real challenges and risks. And there's reasons why that's hard. And there's reasons why we just need more examples of people doing it. Because I think when you're looking back in hindsight and seeing the people that were critical of me maybe weren't the people I should have been listening to. And obviously it sounds like you didn't. But it's easy to sit back and be a critic when you're not the one struggling to also figure it out. And I think that's usually where you find your tribe or your team or your support is like when you once you actually take that brave leap and you step out into an unknown or uncertain future and you're like, oh my God, there's other people out here too that are trying to swim upstream just like me and we're trying to figure it out.
Well, and my profession is great. I talk to 8 people a day and I hear stories. Every hairdresser hears, or barber or esthetician, we hear stories all the time. And a lot of the lessons I've learned are through other people's struggles.
Yeah.
People who maybe are in a situation, whether it be a marriage, a job, a family situation. And the way we all learn is by mistakes.
Oh God. And
people,
it's so true, but it's hard.
I tell everyone jokingly, I'm going to be the best husband ever. And they're like, how do you know? I'm like, I have fucked up.
Because I know what everyone did
25
wrong.
relationships probably. And I try to not make the same mistake twice, but who knows? But even in doing hair, people say, how did you get to be so great? Oh, and I'm no problem. Some people, I was fucking up.
Yeah.
I was turning my friend's hair green. I cut bangs too short, like to the middle of their forehead. I gave friends a chemical cut. If you don't know what a chemical cut is, when you use too strong a bleach on someone's hair and it breaks.
Good God, yeah.
And you're rinsing it and you see the hair going down the drain. That's how I knew I loved it, because I still came back the next day. And that's with everything.
You can also say that with relationships. Like you're going to...
But with relationships, it's a little bit different, I think, because you also have to learn to know when to walk away.
Yeah.
Like you can come back tomorrow, but at some point you're giving up yourself.
Yeah.
And you have to say, I'm done.
Like when compromise becomes too compromising.
Yeah. And I'll be the first to admit, gosh, I'm 43 now. For 38 years, I was not good at relationships. I wasn't horrible, but I didn't understand, in my opinion, again, listening to clients and talking to clients and what they don't like about their husbands or their boyfriends or their mistress, which is what I call them, because, you can't have a mistress that's a dude. So I've made up a word called mistress.
I like it.
Compromise.
Yeah.
You have to learn, sometimes it's not about what Corey wants to do. The same way, even with hair.
Yes.
Someone says, Corey, I want stripy Kelly Clarkson highlights.
But you're not going to do that, though. I'm going to call you, because here's the thing. I've come to you with a couple of ideas and you're like, no. And maybe that depends on the client and the relationship you have with the client, but that's also why I trust you. Is because you'll always lay it out so honestly with me. I remember coming to you thinking, I think I want to go red. And you were like, well, you have the coloring for it. You could do it. But this is going to be a year of your life when you decide you don't want it anymore and you want me to change it back. It's going to be a year of your life.
Yeah, but that's easy. But like, if someone wants something really bad.
Okay.
I'm sure Kelly Clarkson's a wonderful person. I'm certain she is.
Well, we're talking about her hair like 15 years ago. It's not like that
but
now.
That's kind of coming back. Or a perm.
Oh, yeah.
There are things people ask for all the time. Perms, 100%. People out there, I will not do a perm. I will not do that. But if you, Danielle Dellen, says to me, Corey, I really want these chucks. And you give me a look, the look you women give when you mean business. I would have no choice.
Right.
No, people don't come to me with this crazy shit. But
no,
that's where I have to do my job. If you're insistent on it, no, I'm going to do it here. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I have to. Now, there are things that I don't compromise. And this is what I learned from Bobby Cooper. The times I won't cut someone's hair dramatically because there are 3 times you don't. And that's if they're going through a breakup.
Yep.
If they just got married or just had a baby.
Yep.
Because, you're emotional and things like that. But I didn't listen to that all the time. I did a few and it didn't turn out well. So
the moral of the story is when you're going through a major life transition, that's not the time to change your hair.
Okay.
Unless it's in a car accident and maybe you guys had an epiphany.
Right. And then so my grandfather came to me after a car accident and said, it's time to change your hair.
I was like, wait, what?
So I would be remiss if I didn't get a couple of nuggets from you because, for the people who aren't your clients, which everyone listening should be, what are some of the best things? Like, what are some of your, I don't know, do you have your top 2 or 3 tips that people can do to really maintain healthy hair? Or maybe what are the things that people should avoid?
Number 1, don't dye your hair at home.
Don't dye your hair at home.
Number 1.
Why?
It's not. So usually with professional color, it's going to get too technical, it can penetrate the actual hair shaft and it colors it and it stays. With box dye or box color, it kind of just sits on the surface.
Is that why it washes out so quickly?
It does, but also chokes the hair.
Oh.
And people just don't realize that when they put it all over, you're putting layer after layer after layer after layer, and then they want to come in and say, make me a blonde. No.
Okay.
So that would be number 1, especially with the potential of all of us being at home quarantined for 2 weeks.
Yes.
Please, clients, I just saw a tweet the other day that said, no matter how bad it gets, don't box dye.
I love it.
And I agree with that.
Yeah. Little coronavirus advice.
Mm-hmm. Second would be, everyone, you all can't be Jennifer Aniston weekly. Can you make me look like Jennifer Aniston? 1, the pictures you see of her, she just had it professionally blown out and done and styled. I mean, no.
So what advice do you have for someone who wants to, is it good to look for people that maybe likely have your texture hair when you're looking for hair inspiration?
Yes.
Because there's been a couple of people that I'm I remember all through middle school and high school, I wanted to have Sarah Michelle Gellar's hair because I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but she has thin, straight, naturally straight hair. That is not my hair.
At all.
And that's when I made bad bang mistakes because she could pull off these cute little pixie bangs. And then it was hence the title of my podcast. I learned the hard way.
Yeah, that would be good. But I would say even more than that, just find yourself a hairdresser you can trust.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying keep switching until you find one, because that's also bad too. When you constantly are switching, especially if you're getting highlights or bleach on your hair, because everyone highlights differently. So you can run the risk of getting a chemical cut. But just listen. I mean, you wouldn't go. My biggest pet peeve is when people try to guide me.
Oh.
From the chair.
Uh-huh.
What are you doing here? Shouldn't we put something on this spot? What's going to go right there? What's going to go in this place? Shouldn't we put one more layer right there? It's not an order of French fries. You can't put one more layer.
Sure.
It's like, if you say you want it a little bit lighter than that, because you don't go to your dentist and guide them. You don't go to your doctor, and when they diagnose you, you say, well, I think you're wrong, doc. Or if you do, more power to you.
So you're more saying rather than if you're sitting in the chair, because what's hard is I think because there's all those mirrors, you're watching the process evolve, but you don't understand the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more like if you have a comment, wait until it's done.
Sure.
Wait, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound harsh.
No.
But it's just, it's a very stressful job.
Sure.
A lot of times, again, I mask the stress with jokes.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you never know when I'm stressed in the chair.
Mm-hmm.
I can be 30 minutes behind schedule. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, you don't know that. But when I'm doing that.
In 7 years, I've only come in for one correction. And it was when I dyed my hair dark brown.
Yeah.
And there was this little, I asked for something crazy. I asked for bangs and I asked you to dye my hair dark brown.
Why did we do that? I don't even remember.
I think it was after I got married. And you were like, I won't cut it short, but I will. I was like, well, what will you let me do? And so anyway, and I remember you went over to Bobby and you consulted. You're like, okay, can she do bangs? Yes. Okay. How could she? Okay. And so anyway, it was 6 months after I got married and I wanted to change it. But anyway, I came in but in 7 years, it wasn't even, I don't even know what it was, but it wasn't, I think it was just I wanted to highlight.
Which in hindsight, that was correct because I think that, it was just one of those things where maybe I just missed a foil.
And but my God, that's not even a mistake. That's just, I don't even know. But I can really relate to, because I just recently, as of last week, had a client. It was a couple I've been working with for a long time. And one person in this couple started seeing an additional counselor that was referred to them for addiction, and which is great. I mean, sometimes it takes a village and sometimes you need multiple sources to really get the care that you need. But this person's personality and approach was more, I guess, the way that they described it sounds like more aggressive and direct.
And so they came to me and they were like, I just think you're too nice to us. I think I don't think you push us enough. We're
not a football coach.
Right. Well, and I think, in terms of the process, I just remember asking like, so you think I need to be harder on you for you to listen?
What, you make her cry?
Well, it wasn't a woman. But again, it was just, it's interesting how I think it's just kind of, it's hard to be discerning because maybe you do need something or someone different. Maybe you do need someone who has a different approach to hair or therapy or whatever. Or to your point, like you don't go and you don't critique the dentist halfway through your teeth cleaning. Like, oh, I don't know.
But maybe they do.
Well, and again, I think it's hard to know, like, when are you questioning the things that really need to be questioned that because they need to change? And when are you maybe just trying to manage too much because you're...
Well, and obviously, these women, which I love all of my clients. I mean, I can honestly say that there has never been a day I didn't want to go to work. Yeah. There are days that I'm tired physically, especially during holiday season, but I'm never going to, I hope, I wake up and say, I don't want to go to work today. Now, with that stuff being said, it is your hair. You have to wear it. You have to be able to style it. I'll tell people, I'm not going to cut your hair this way because I know, Danielle, you can't style it like this.
Right.
I had a client who came in who wanted a shag. Against my better judgment, I gave her a shag. It was a very layered haircut that if you don't blow it out, it looks choppy. She came to me a week later, 2 weeks later, and was like, I need you to fix this. Can we just do something? I should have listened to you. Not because she's not a wonderful person, has wonderful hair. She has both of those, but she doesn't have the time to do the blowout. You know what I'm saying? Like to get it done. And so in those situations, it's great when they're understanding.
Yeah.
Like I've had people who have done what they said and you gave me a horrible haircut and blah, blah, blah. But again, it's my job to guide them. Right. To say, I don't think you should do this shag, Danielle. Like it's going to be really hard for you to get a round brush back there and take care of this. Then if you still choose, because again, if I don't do it, back to Kelly Clarkson, you're going to go somewhere else. And I'd rather...
Well, you do seem to, I think you do tread that line well of like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I am going to tell you this is more than likely how it's going to feel, or this is more than likely how it's going to end up. So that leads me to, because I know we're nearing the end of our time, but so the title of the podcast is Don't Cut Your Own Bang. And I end every podcast with a don't cut your own bang moment. And obviously, since you are a man who shaves his head, like my husband, I love bald men.
Shout out to bald guys.
Yep. Shout out to the bald men. So, bald is brave. Bald is beautiful. Sorry, I keep wanting to think of more hashtags. But
go bald or go home.
Yeah, go bald or go home. So I would love to hear, and you have so many stories, I should have you back on. What would be a don't cut your own bang moment that you would like to share?
A story about what?
So a story about like so the idea of don't cut your own bangs is like, we start with this idea of what we want to create. We have our scissors and we snip. And then as soon as we snip, we're like, oh shit, this was a mistake. But usually you learn a valuable lesson, which is trust a professional. In your case, what was a time where you maybe went all into something? Didn't go quite as planned, but you learned something from it.
1996. I was 19.
Take me back. What were you wearing?
Probably a Tommy Hilfiger jacket.
Did you have the box cut?
I think I had just cut it off, actually. Tommy Hilfiger jacket.
Yep.
Probably some Guess jeans, Jordans, and a multicolored shirt.
Okay.
Think Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yep, that's where I was going.
And I decided I wanted a tattoo. Didn't know what I wanted. Just decided I wanted a tattoo.
Yep.
Convinced my cousins we should all get tattoos.
I want something permanent, but I don't know what.
We're a family, damn it. Let's get a family tattoo. And everyone's like, yeah, let's do it. And over by the old airport, there was a tattoo parlor called Artistic Skin Design. I think they're still around. There's one on Keystone for sure. The day came to get the tattoos. I'm all excited. I call and page my cousins on their pagers because this was the 90s. No one's responding. And I have a huge family. I think that when I counted last, it was like 19 of us, like cousins and stuff.
Oh my God.
Of which 9 are my mother's kids. Shout out to Deborah, fertile Deborah. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go get it. So I go to the tattoo parlor. I don't even have an idea of what I want. I get in there and this big biker dude brings me back in, sits me down, goes, what do you want? He's like 6'7", covered in tattoos. And I go, you got any pictures of doggies? I'm not even making this
up. You're like 6'1". You're not a small guy.
I was 6'1". I'm now 200 pounds, you know, but I was then probably like 150, 155, if I'm lucky. And he goes, you don't even know what you want? And I'm like, no. And he goes, gets this magazine or book binder with all these designs in there. Uh-huh. And he kind of shoves it in my chest and goes, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. When I come back, you better know what you want.
I feel like tribal tattoos are the Jennifer Aniston haircut of tattoos.
Barbed wire.
Yes.
So he walks outside to smoke a cigarette. I'm thinking, I got to get the hell out of here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to climb out of a window or run out the back door. I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. My Camaro is parked out front. And I look, there are no other doors. No ways out.
Wow.
No windows, nothing. So I run back to the room. I'm sitting and I see him smoking the cigarette in the front of the building. This little nasty ass strip mall. And I'm flipping through the page, flipping through it. As he walks in the door, I turn the page and see a pit bull tattoo. And I go, I'll take that. And he goes, you sure? And I'm like, yep. And I have still to this day a faded out pit bull on my right shoulder from the tattoo that I got that I should not have purchased.
Okay. So what did you learn?
I learned I should have just paid him the money and left because it was not a good decision. I'm not embarrassed about it.
Sure.
Like it's not like it's someone's name. But the ironic thing is it was also the day that this is a good thing that Tupac died. Not good that he died.
Yeah.
But I was a huge Tupac fan, as everyone was. Thank God I didn't know we didn't have cell phones and instant media. I would have gotten Thug Life tattooed across my stomach. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So a time where lack of technology and connection actually prevented you from making a worse decision.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I thought about going the next day and getting it. Like one down, 60 to go, something like that.
Yeah.
But that would be my don't cut your own bangs moment. Like just don't get a tattoo unless you're certain.
100%.
But you love it. Again, I don't hate it.
You can always get it covered.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just a better lesson for you to leave it.
It's also just a great story.
Yeah, it is.
Like
it is.
People, do you have any tattoos, Corey? Got this mean ass pit bull on my shoulder. Ironically, I'm terrified of pit bulls.
Well, and what's funny is like if I were to think about like, which dog, like certain people like, that's a lab person. That's I wouldn't imagine you with a pit bull.
No, but I did have Rottweilers growing up.
Okay.
But pit bulls, I've always just been uneasy around.
Sure.
And I think it's growing up in Gary, Indiana, and sadly walking up on dog fights. Mm-hmm. You walk home from school.
Yeah.
And you'd hear it and you see it. And it was always pit bulls. And so it just ingrained in me this fear. Yeah. And there'd be some that run loose, through the neighborhood. They'd break out and everyone knew someone who was attacked by a pit bull.
Wow.
So to have one on me for the rest of my life is rather ironic.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
it's a good thing I didn't turn the page with a dolphin, You know what I mean? Or a mermaid or something like that. Can you imagine?
Oh, God. Can
you imagine telling that to your girlfriend the first time you make love?
Yeah. It's like, so do you love dolphins? No, I just didn't know what else to pick.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, literally, as he walked through the door, I turned the page. And it was the first thing.
Well, I think that's a wonderful, I don't know if anyone can hear it. Like I don't know why there's like shouting in the hallway nearby somewhere. So
they're not practicing social distancing.
Well, Corey, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. I loved this.
I feel like we just scratched the surface with your stories too. So I will have to have you back. You know what? You can be a repeat special guest because we need to get more into hair. We need to get more into like, God, your childhood stories just crack me up too. So we'll have to have you like as a regular featured guest back when you have time, when you're not working.
Absolutely. I'd love to give you some Gary, Indiana, 1980s and early 90s stories.
That's what we need. That is what we need. Well, I'm going to let you go so you can go put your clients' extensions in and continue just having a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Don't Cut Your Own Bangs. If you want to get connected with all things Corey Sleet, I'll make sure to link his information if you want to make an appointment with him. I highly recommend that you do. I will make sure to add all that in the show notes, so make sure to check that out. And if you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Your engagement in this goes such a long way. So thank you if you've already been doing it. If you haven't, that's okay. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you've got other things going on. I get it. Just thank you for listening. And I hope you have an incredible day.